So I want to talk today a little bit about being overwhelmed. Overwhelm is a feeling that we all get from time to time, and I want to talk about some of the reasons that you can be going through this sort of really pervasive feeling of being overwhelmed when you might not even realize where it's coming from. Because I've really noticed there's periods in my life where I can handle a lot of stress really, really easily, and it's like things just bounce off me. And then there's times in my life where I become extremely overwhelmed and there's really not that much pressure being applied. So to give you a little bit of insight into what I've noticed in terms of when I'm going through a period of real transformation, it tends to be coupled with a lot of feelings of being overwhelmed. And part of what I feel this is about is that when you're shedding your skin, in essence, when you are moving from a former version of yourself into this newly upgraded version of yourself, which happens to us over and over in different seasons of our lives. Essentially, the old version of you is becoming overwhelmed with the new upgraded version of yourself, because you're sort of dancing between two separate people in a sense. Because when you are letting old patterns die, when you're moving into a new era of being, some of the coping strategies and some of the ways that you may have dealt with things previously are no longer available to you, or are part of, or basically are not part of how you are coping in terms of this new version of self. So that can lead to a lot of feelings of overwhelm. And I'm going to use a relevant example for this, okay? So let's say that previously you had dealt with stress and problems by, say, going out and drinking with friends. And in a way, you were always able to handle things with that set of coping mechanisms. And if you were going to be moving into an era of your life where you are going to be dealing with things at face value, using no external kind of anything externally to dull your emotions, and now you're walking this path where, again, you are just facing everything head on, you might feel the experience of being extremely overwhelmed with what you're dealing with, because you're dealing with everything in real time instead of deferring to, say, an old version of yourself that might have gravitated to taking an easy way out, or again, dulling some of the experience. And so the reason that I'm making this video is because I really want you to pay attention to what you've upgraded in terms of your own personal experience, your identity, and the way that you're moving throughout not only your relationships, but how you're showing up in the world. Another example of this, another great example of this, is learning to set boundaries and learning to say no. So if you were a person in the past that didn't set really clear boundaries and really had a trouble with saying no to others, when you're integrating this new version of yourself, you can find this transition period extremely overwhelming, because again, you're getting your footing on becoming that new version of yourself. And again, this is just an example. I'm not saying that these two examples that I'm speaking about would or would not be the reason for you being overwhelmed. But anytime that I'm teaching, I like to bring it back to some sort of applicable example, so that it's not just talking about an experience. We can kind of relate it back to something that is actually happening in reality. And in terms of upgrading, So when we're talking about how much pressure you can handle in terms of daily life and, your view of yourself, because again, everything kind of boils down to our own personal experience and how we are really viewing ourselves in terms of our position and our place in the world and what we're accomplishing. So when we are going through a period of feeling extremely overwhelmed or feeling that there is a lot of pressure in our life, it's really important for us to also understand and step back and not be too extremely hard on ourselves. Because if you are in a period of feeling overwhelmed, feeling like life is kind of dragging you down, and then you are layering frustrations that are coming and stemming from your own consciousness onto that feeling of being overwhelmed, you're really just adding fuel to the fire. So it's really important that to kind of create this equilibrium in terms of your own mental stability and just your experience in day-to-day life, that you take the time to really sit back and appreciate yourself. There is nothing more important in terms of things that you can give to yourself than self-love. And what I mean by this is just really taking the time to look at your accomplishments, the things that you bring to the world, the light that you are. And sometimes, again, when we are perfectionistic, when we are our own worst critics, this can be extremely difficult to do. But it is an essential part of the spiritual process. And if you are working towards ascension, if you're working towards really raising your vibration, part of that equation is a very grounded semblance of self-love. And that means that you have to appreciate yourself. You have to give yourself time. You have to give yourself space to actually be. And that can be extremely hard in our frantic everyday lives in the world that we live right now, but it is a crucial part not only of spiritual practice, but if we're just talking at a fundamental 3D level in terms of your mental health, you need to work on self-love. Nobody is ever going to get to that peaceful state in their life if they are not taking that journey. And again, it's a day by day, minute by minute, hour by hour practice of stabilizing your thought patterns into a sequence of self-love. And when you are giving this love to yourself, when you're appreciating who and what you are and what you bring to the world, it becomes infinitely more effortless to love the external world, to love the people, situations, obstacles, lessons, everything around you, when you are basically filling your own cup. Because it is not the world's obligation necessarily to build you up and fill you up. You need to be able to give that aspect to yourself, and that needs to spring from that internal source of self-generating unconditional love. And this brings me back to one of my favorite topics, which is unconditional love. You have to love yourself. You have to be the one that is your loudest, biggest cheerleader. And certainly you're going to have people on the outside that are going to challenge you, that are not necessarily going to build you up, that may criticize you. And sometimes that criticism is healthy. It's things that you want to look at and pay attention to. But you can't let the external world bring you down or dampen the light that you are. And every single human being, every single life form, every single animal, plant that's on the planet has this specialness about them. And again, it's when we take the time to honor the sacredness of life, when we take the time to honor the sacred journey and the experience of living, and we slow down even in the midst of chaos. I mean, I want to be really clear, my day has been extremely chaotic today. I had a flood going on, happening from the ceiling. I had to rearrange a whole bunch of classrooms. I had lots of management meetings, and it can feel extremely overwhelming, almost like Chicken Little, the sky is falling, which piece do I grab first? But I still took a moment to slow down, give myself a pat on the back, say, you know what, you're doing this, it's amazing. You're feeling a little bit of overwhelm, and again, feeling overwhelmed can also present itself like anxiety, because again, you start feeling like there's all of these balls in the air. Which one am I going to focus on? Where am I going to juggle this? Where am I going to juggle that? And there's not enough of me to go around. Doesn't matter what position you're playing in life. If you are a parent, if you are a boss, if you're an employee, maybe you're struggling with mental health issues, maybe you're struggling with external factors, money, whatever it is. There's a lot of things that can become overwhelming in life. But the first and foremost, most important thing that you need to do is turn it back around, love yourself, be your biggest cheerleader. Don't have a negative internal dialogue when you're feeling overwhelmed that is going to derail you, because that inner voice needs to be pervasively positive. You need to be circling back around and saying, you know what, you're awesome, you've got this, you can handle this, you know what, it's not overwhelming, you're going to be okay. And when you can start to talk to yourself in these ways, you will start to notice that you just naturally calm down and you start to feel extremely grounded, and you actually continually up your capacity for what you can handle, and you'll make yourself extremely proud of yourself if you start to do and to look at life in this way. So again, not going to make this a super long video because I've got to get back to work, but just wanted to say again, if you are feeling overwhelmed, you're not alone. Life can be a little bit overwhelming, but take it in strides, calm down, give yourself a pat on the back. Don't integrate negative thought patterns. Don't talk to yourself negatively. Be your biggest cheerleader. Build yourself up. Take time to build others up around you, because again, when you are pushing forward with that positive spirit and really making everything about that high vibrational energy, you will move through any anxiety and any aspect of feeling overwhelmed quite smoothly, and you get to the other end, and before you know it, you're at the end of the day and you are enjoying a nice walk in the park. So anyways, have a great one, and I will see you in the next video.